Hi, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Academy Business Conversations. Today we have with us Melanie Richards and Mario Singh. I'm Chike Farrell, of course, our group chairman, and we're going to be discussing sustainability and how it impacts and makes sense of it in a real way. Versus, like we hear about it in a global context, the recent context, organizations have positions, but what is sustainability? So I think that's really a good place to start. So Mario, if you could do the honors, in terms of kicking us off, what is sustainability and what does it mean? Just what does it mean? You hear it all the time, so give us some real context to it.
Again, thanks for inviting me to be part of the conversation, Keith. And
Yes.
First, I think I should recognize we have a lot of citizens going through pain right now with the flooding situation. And I'll start with the issue of flooding. So the way I look at sustainability, I think of it as a bank account. So our generation, we've inherited our parents or grandparents, they had this nice fat bank account.
Right.
Filled with something called natural capital. So essentially, they've been able to continuously withdraw from that bank account, whether it be water, land, resources,
Right.
fish.
Gas, natural
Right.
gas, the whole thing.
Yeah. And we've now reached a point where we're in overdraft. So we're taking out more than we're putting into the account. And that overdraft has a very heavy interest to pay. So what we see happening now is actually the interest that our generation is paying for years of wild spending on that bank account.
Right.
So if we look at that at any level, I think from an individual perspective, trying to manage a budget in a family, you'd say is reckless to be spending more than you're earning.
Definitely.
If it's an organization, we'd call that poor fiscal or fiduciary responsibility, and people could go to jail and lose their job, and shareholders could act up. So even at the government level, the government has to balance their budgets. But being in the human experience, we've become disconnected, thinking that we're separate and apart from nature.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, we all interconnected with nature. And the only difference with nature, we think in short, medium, long term. Short term in nature might be 50 years, might be 100 years. But you have to pay that interest eventually.
Yeah.
So
I love
in a nutshell, to me, sustainability is really, we're now at the point where we reaping what we've sown as an industrial society.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we now navigate that world of uncertainty from the individual household to the business to the government and echoing out to the entire planet.
But you know what's interesting about that? Actually, I love that analogy.
I think it's I've never heard it explained in a way that makes so much sense.
That's very simple and easy to understand. But I think what was interesting about that, I kind of feel like coming at it, Caribbean ideas, but then I kind of like live and work in the US, and I kind of been trying to learn more about sustainability, far from an expert. But okay, so you what you just described, I would think of, you hear this term ESG all the time, which is environment, social, and government, right? And government/governance, I've seen kind of different ones. So you just talked about the E, and I think even as we kind of continue, it'd be interesting to, because different people lean into different parts of this,
right?
This whole sustainability thing.
I think what happens, so the term sustainability, traditionally we think of the three components: the environment, the society, and the economy, the economic component of it. What I think happens is that in our everyday decisions, whether it be as individuals, as businesses, as governments, we focus on the economic part of the decision. So I am going to procure something, whether it be as a business, as a government, or as an individual at home, I'm going to buy something. How much is this going to cost? That's the economic component, right? we don't think of the cost of things in terms of the cost to the environment and the cost to society.
Sure.
So what we do is, whether it be in our budgets at home or in our companies or as a country, we externalize the environmental costs and the societal costs.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? So we externalize those costs and we only account for the economic costs. So this costs $5 in terms of money. When I'm balancing my budget, can I afford $5? We don't say this costs $10 in terms of the environment because it is non-recyclable, non-compostable,
Yeah.
whatever. So we don't add in that $10. And then we don't add in the societal costs because we're not going to be able to get rid of it. So we're going to dump it. It's going to end up in the waterway. It's going to cause a flood and it's going to have a cost to society. That cost might be $20. So we can afford the $5. We didn't think of the $10 or the $20. So the true cost of that is $35.
Yeah, of that
Can we
micro
afford
decision.
$35?
Yes.
We probably cannot. But because we've externalized the social and the environmental costs, we say, yeah, $5, I could afford that, I could afford that. And it comes back to the conversation we were having just before on the issue of consumption. So the recycling and the environmental and the societal implications can only be addressed by addressing consumption. So it's no longer about, I'm going to buy, and yes, I'm going to go down the road of the plastic water bottle. I'm sorry.
Right.
We can no longer say, I'm going to buy the plastic water bottle because I can recycle it.
Right.
We're at a point now, no amount of recycling, no amount of reusing it to grow plants or whatever is going to be enough
Right, to pay off the
to
debt.
pay off
we-
that debt
That debt.
in that bank account, that the overdraft now we're dying from interest. Right? So, I mean, I love how Mario described it.
Yeah.
And it is really the fact that we are not considering this $10 on this side to the environment and this $20 here to society. So we think we can continue consuming and purchasing and spending because all we see is that $5.
But then we see it, to bring it to the layman, right? We see it like, look at today. Today, Trinidad has been experiencing a lot of what people would call absurd amount of rainfall,
Right.
to people bawling like, oh gosh, when the rain going to stop?
Yeah.
Some of the experts are saying this is a direct result of sustainability and climate change and all that.
Absolutely.
And that has implications for the everyday man, like loss of productive hours, people who can't go to school, the children have to stay home, how you think, and bringing it back home. If I am a mid-level ordinary person, how does sustainability or the lack thereof, how does it impact me? What does it mean? What does it mean to me and my everyday living? And I've been hearing people saying, as a small island developing state, it's very unique to us. There are certain things unique to us. So I'm just curious. I mean, Chika, you have that North American perspective. You probably lived there more than you've lived home in Trinidad. But I'll open with you there. Do you see it having some impact? And for us as the man on the street, how does that impact that person?
Yeah, well, I actually think in between the two things that Mario and Melanie shared, it is interesting because I think as an individual, you are making these sort of like micro decisions all the time, right? What car do I want to get? What should I do with my house? Should I make this investment? Should I not make this investment? That sort of thing. And they really are colored by probably a more narrow view of what you should be thinking about. I think when it comes to the impact, from my lens, I've been really interested in some of the social aspects, right? And I think, some of the things around accelerating equality, for example, gender equality, for example, women in leadership, addressing poverty, addressing education. Those sustainable development goals really kind of speak to me because sometimes they are ones that I feel like people can really relate to. Like, okay, because kind of to your point, they create a different form of economic impact.
Right.
That is, there's the cost side and then there's the benefit side.
Right.
And those ones, and I think different, sustainable development goals kind of like speak to different people too. But then ultimately you need to, whether it's as a country, a company, or an individual, find the way to touch across multiple things,
Yeah, I just want to, and I know it's because we're trying to break this down as simple as possible as it relates to sustainable development goals, because I think we hear this term and we often think these are these large,
Pie in the
high
sky,
up there,
yeah,
high
high
in the
mantle.
sky
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
And just to put it into context, Trinidad and Tobago, all the Caribbean states and many of the countries in the world are part of the United Nations system, and they have developed these sustainable development goals, which are these 17 goals, as you mentioned, gender equality, no poverty, those types of things, that we are, as a planet, trying to get to, because that is the path to sustainability. That is the path to us reducing that interest on that overdraft right now.
Yep.
And there are a number of components of that. But when we think of it as these big country level things, it often, we feel disconnected from it
it's the
because we
same
think
ex-
that has
it's the
nothing
same
really
external thing
to
we were
do
talking about.
with me.
Yeah.
The country has to achieve these goals. That's not me.
Yes.
But then going back to your point about look at the weather today, look at these unpredictable patterns that we're seeing. This is our reality. This is the effect of what generations have done in the past. And if we want to ensure that future generations, our children and our children's children, have some kind of planet worthy of living on, then the buck stops here. We need to address it. Going back to that point about the economic and the social considerations and incorporating those, it's not easy because those things are, it's not easily quantifiable. So we can't say, like how we can say the $5, we can't quantify those two things. And also they're sort of long term and we don't see the direct impact of them right away. I do think more and more now, and coming back to the issue of the rain, we are realizing that unless we do something, this is our reality. This is what it's going to be going forward. So we either address it and do something, or we don't complain.
But I think that's interesting because, I'd imagine that someone can be sitting down, listening to this conversation, and, they could be the individual decision maker, but they also work in an organization. Their organization is maybe, if they're lucky, actually, because I think it's been happening more and more, their organization is starting to talk about sustainability. Their organization is starting to invest in it, or maybe they can influence people in their organization. So I want to then get to maybe what people are doing, could be doing within their organizations. I mean, you're at a major organization, NGC, National Gas Company, that I think is one of a number of companies that is starting to really invest, or has started even, frankly, to invest. How have you seen that journey, I guess, to make this central within your organization, and what can people do, I guess? Yeah.
So there's a saying I like to use from a guy called Bob Proctor, where he says, energy goes where attention flows.
Right.
So it sort of has to happen from two directions, from the bottom up and from the top down. And usually, sometimes we just see things being driven from the top down. And when you don't get that buy-in, whether it be in an organization or the wider society, from an individual perspective, I think in the world we lived in, and the pandemic has sort of jumpstart that, where you could be in any part of the world and work remotely.
Right.
What the flip side to that is we now competing in a global space for certain skills, and if we project outwards, there may be a time in the near future where companies would start seeking the best talent, no matter where they are in the globe.
Right.
So I think what has to happen, people need to make themselves more aware, and the information is out there. You can just go on go on Google and type in sustainability, and you'd see how much information is available.
But Mario,
So
I want to challenge that a little bit, right? Let's be a little controversial a little bit, right? So growing up, I remember hearing about littering. Littering campaigns were everywhere, and it
Chase Charlie away.
yeah, exactly, and it brought it down to very practical and real levels, preschool, secondary school, adult, like it targeted. But like I feel like sustainability as a thing now, we're only talking to people now at a certain level. Do you think, and I'm just asking like to the panel, to like the group of us, do you all think that sustainability has sufficiently been broken down for everybody at every level to understand? Is there maybe, context in a preschool level that sensitizing kids to it, primary school and going through it?
So I would say no. There's a lot of work. In terms of Trinidad, I think we just beginning.
Yeah.
But the benefit we have, and as something we were discussing earlier, there are a lot of young, bright, upcoming professionals who really making waves in the space. So some people, they might be physically here, but they on some UN panel here, they might be on some Caribbean-based organization elsewhere. And really, how do we tap into those young people and really let them have the freedom and the space to really express themselves and share some of the ideas. So I think for me, the fundamental issue is the challenges we face. Incremental change won't get us out of the situation.
Okay.
And it really needs to be a total relook of the way we do things, whether it be at the individual level or an organization. And business as usual is not going to put you in a good position to be able to withstand when we have more floods and we have more droughts.
Correct.
So take for example, if you have a business and you're making snow cones, and 90% of your product is water, right?
Right.
Water is projected to be one of the biggest challenges because of climate change. So at the individual level, if people can't get access to a basic commodity as water to run a business or to do whatever, so sometimes it could feel far off, but I think we are at the point where these things now starting to really manifest in the society.
Can't kick that can down the road.
Yeah, we can't kick it to the next generation. But education and awareness has to be a big part of that. And the individual has a responsibility as well as business. I think business has a big role to play because business has certain leverage in the society.
Yeah.
Business has access to certain resources. And really, when business speaks, people tend to listen.
Yep.
I'm glad you said that, because I think for me, philosophically, from entrepreneurial experience or what have you in the Caribbean, certainly in Trinidad and Tobago with our oil and our natural gas and so on, there tends to be, for me, too much of to your point of other people's problems, the government needs to insert solution, right? So I like what you said, because it puts it back on a coalition of people taking responsibility. And I think that leaders, which is really, what this conversation is about, and who I think end up looking at a lot of what we do here, can do things. To your point, they can take responsibility within their organization, and then if multiple, you can create the network effect. And also, because a big part of this is, as you said, I mean, for me as a marketing guy, it's almost, I guess, an intellectually interesting problem to create that top-down, bottoms-up thing that you just described as the way to make it. Like, that really requires a lot of different people touching a lot more people to kind of create the impact you want.
I think there are 2 points I want to pick up on. One was Mario's point about this group of young, innovative superstars, as I see them, that are coming to business now, coming to entrepreneurship now from a position or a vision of sustainability.
Right.
Yes.
So they are no longer saying, okay, I am going to provide a service or design a product and then, like traditional business, say, well, how am I going to do this? And then, I need to consider a little bit of sustainability in this.
Yeah.
They are now saying, I am going to design, exactly. That's their purpose. And I think that's great. And I think we have amazing young entrepreneurs that don't get enough attention. Because honestly, I think our generation, we messed it up, right? There's no hope for us. And I say that from my generation go on. We are not the answer anymore. It's these young, bright, and not just bright book sense, like innovative, creative young people who are coming up with all of these amazing ideas that are driven from a purpose of sustainability.
Right.
And I think that's part of the answer. I also feel that, of course, existing businesses, the traditional ones that focused on money, that are now understanding that that is not alone going to save us. They obviously have to do their part, and however we need to retrofit or however we need to adjust to this perspective of sustainability. I also feel, though, that there is a big role for governments, and I say governments, not the government, so this is anybody who is in that position. There is a big role that they don't understand how much impact they can have. And I give you one example. So the government in many of our Caribbean countries, in many countries around the world, is the single largest procurer of goods and services.
Right.
Nobody buys more goods and services than the government.
Right.
That gives you extreme power. And I've been using this example and beating it like a dead horse for years. I understand, though, that in a short-term 5-year cycle, no one wants to make the hard decisions that are politically don't put you where you want to. Exactly. Right? We are looking for votes here. Right? One example. Buildings and infrastructure. No one rents more properties in this country than the government, right? They have properties all over the place. If 5 years ago, a government said, in 5 years' time, we will only rent properties that are sustainably, whether it be built or retrofitted. Right?
But aligned towards,
Exactly. So we're not saying today, we're not saying tomorrow, next year, the year after. We're giving you 5 years. But understand, if your building does not meet certain standards of sustainability in 5 years, we will not be doing business with you.
And the policy is aligned.
Exactly. So that's the position. So what we do is we give 5 years for all of these property owners to get their house in order. What then that starts to do is shift not only, well, remember it's the private sector who they're renting from. So that then starts to shift capital and shift thinking. So everyone in the private sector now says the whole construction, I mean, and this example might be, I might be making it out to be simple, right? And I know it's not simple. But
the point is certainly
but
taken.
understand the point, right? So we then, everybody says, well, okay, we have 5 years. When the government is looking for property in 5 years, I am going to be there.
Right.
So construction starts to move towards sustainable buildings. People who are providing, whether it be water services, lighting, whatever, anything that you need for a building starts to move there. So if you then going into the private sector now, the supply of those types of things, solar panels, whatever, starts to move there.
Yeah. You know what's interesting about that is that that same thing I think is actually happening, right? I really like that example because I think I've heard of private companies that are getting asked by their international partners, well, hey, before I buy from you, you tell me what you're doing in this area. So to your point,
Right.
yes, government's gonna have a huge impact, but really, I think what I take from that is that, well, no, it's more people asking that kind of question in transactional scenarios can have this like really big
Right,
impact.
and it's really, that is an example of this kind of creating this enabling. So we're not saying, okay, government, it's your problem to solve, but you can take actions that can start to shift the way people think. And when I talk about sustainability, I think there are a number of other issues just on the point of buildings, things like access for persons with disabilities, all of those types of things. You can have there's standards for all of these types of things that can sort of shift the way that we think about things. So I think there is a huge role, and that's just in one area. But the challenge is you only have, now I'm not saying you can't get up tomorrow and tell people this is happening today for tomorrow, right? You need to give people at least 5 years. You need to say in 5 years' time, and I'm going to get in trouble for this is probably going to be edited out. You need to say in 5 years' time, we will not have any more plastic water bottles, right? Give people 5 years to figure it out.
Right.
But it goes back to the point where recycling is not enough. Mario's point, cleaning up the beach of the plastic bottles is not enough. We need to stop drinking water from the plastic bottles. So,
yeah.
And then there's the whole so a lot of what we've talked about, like recycling, is the idea of doing less bad. Less bad.
Right.
And that has kind of been the lens that, for example, environmental management, that companies, so, okay, I produce a product, I have effluents going out, I have air pollution, so let me do less bad by limiting how much, so that's okay, but less bad is like putting a plaster on the,
yes.
so sustainability will ask, am I doing the right business process in the first place to begin with? Can I design out pollution instead of creating the pollution and then trying to figure out what to do? But what tends to happen, for example, in that approach, sometimes you just shift the externality to somebody else.
Yeah.
So if we take e-waste, so we have a lot of companies take e-waste and they send it to a provider, and that provider, they ship it out. But like research has shown, most of those products end up either in I think Ghana or on the west coast of India.
Really?
Yeah, so essentially where there's the least amount of environmental regulation.
Oh, so it's like
will end
dumping.
up.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is just shifting our externalities, our waste, our problems with the products we design to somewhere else. But the challenge with that is and more research, there's a concept called planetary boundaries. And we're now showing that things that happen in the Pacific, eventually it would end up here, and everything is one ecosystem that really connected. So how do we think circular? And circular economy essentially is trying to mimic nature. And if you look at nature, the process that nature, there's no waste.
Yeah.
Every waste from one species is the food or the input for the creation of our next species. So, for example, in packaging, have compostable packaging with seeds in it. So if it ends up by the odd chance it ends up
at the wayside,
of the road, it could still be part of nature.
Which is why I have my kids watch Circle of Life, right? So that continuity bit on it.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you this. I mean, kind of come back to what you've seen be effective, right? Mm-hmm. And then I want to hear from you as well, because you both are very experienced in this field. And as you said, in Trinidad and Tobago and maybe other parts of the Caribbean, we certainly are very aware of the climate impacts, and there was just COP27, and actually it was a pretty big landmark deal in terms of getting some level of commitment from developed countries to fund, essentially almost like putting into a bank account again for developing countries. But bring it back, and I always kind of come back to, okay, well, what's working? What are the best practices? If I want to do something, yes, okay, I could buy a different car, maybe I could this, maybe I could that. And I think that is super, super value. What are you seeing in organizations that are trying to make their way in sustainability? Because I see big ones, you all are one, banks. I think we're a small company, 40 people or what have you, and we probably could, I'm like listening to this conversation, I'm like, what could we be doing differently?
Right.
Yeah. But then there are companies with 10,000 employees, and 500 employees, and 5,000 employees. Is anybody doing anything that you think is effective to either create behavior change or put more into that sort of bank account that we were talking about?
Yeah, so from the organizational perspective, I think one needs to happen. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know, right?
Right.
And you need to get to the point of fully understand what's the life cycle impact of my business. And you look at those impacts, and then you look at what strengths do I have as an organization, and how can I leverage those strengths to help solve that problem. And then it starts to kind of make linkages in the wider society. So I'll give an example. So for example, at NGC, methane emissions is a big one, and methane is 80 times more potent than. So for us, going and picking up plastic bottles is not really a material impact of the business.
Got you.
So we've laser focused on methane. We for the last 2 years or 3 years, we've been using satellites to measure our impact. We recently got gold standard in the Oil and Gas Methane Partnership, which essentially says that we've done a good job of mapping those impacts. We have a good plan how we intend to reduce it, and we have a good monitoring regime. So for us, focusing our attention on reducing our methane emissions could have a positive impact on our business and reduce the impact our business has on the environment. So for any business, I think, and they have numerous tools they could use. For example, if you go to the sustainable SASB, Sustainable Accounting Business Standards, SASB, I might have gotten the acronym wrong. They have a simple materiality finder that you could plug in your business, see which industry in.
Oh, wow.
And it'll identify impacts.
Amazing. Okay, I love that.
Yeah. So I think it should be a customized approach to your business. What are those impacts? The other part I want to talk about is collaboration. Right. And doing it in silos and everybody doing their own is less effective than coming together to tackle it as a kind of coalition. So for example, with methane, we've now we signed a partnership with BP.
Okay.
BP tapping into using our satellite data to help. And those are the kind of relationships we
love that.
look at with our business. So that same framework, I think, could be applied. And Melanie would tell us she actually did help us with our materiality assessment.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. For each business, it's going to be different.
Right.
There is no one-size-fits-all approach. And what NGC has done and is doing, they've identified what is our biggest problem and how can we tackle that.
Right.
We're not spending time going and picking up plastic bottles on the beach because that is not helping. It's not making any material difference.
Sure.
And to Mario's point again, that yes, we have to do little things as well, but we're not getting where we need to go by doing little things. We need to look at what is my organization doing, what is creating the biggest problem, and this is why I love this new, younger generation, innovative approach to business from the sustainability perspective, because they're coming into this having thought that through already.
Yeah.
I am going to design this product because it addresses a situation of sustainability. It is something that we need, but I am doing it in a manner that I've thought through the sustainability before I came to business. I also want to talk about something which I think is really potentially a real problem now, and we were speaking about it before, which is this greenwashing. So now everything is green, we're all sustainable, everyone is all up in ESG, and unless it is authentic and genuine, saying it because it's the right thing to say, or because it makes your business look like if we are,
Like if,
we're there, we're right there.
Yeah.
And I think that does a lot of damage as well, because, well, first of all, it's not genuine. So you're not really helping the problem, but potentially you're also making it worse because you're making people think, well, okay, yeah, we have this thing under control because
It's a papi show.
yeah, we're all doing
Right.
what we're supposed to be doing. So then there's more of a sort of tendency to say, well, okay, good, that company is doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're at the forefront of this. They're, I don't know, sign all these commitments. They're doing whatever they're supposed to be doing. But a lot of, I mean, this is international. This is not local as well.
Sure.
There's a lot of greenwashing that is happening. So there is a lot of marketing, and I know you're the marketing expert, so you all know how to make things look the way they should.
Yeah.
But has the organization really looked at its processes and looked at its products and said, well, okay, how is what I'm doing affecting the environment, affecting society?
How we measure, and then the data to back it up.
Right, and then how are we addressing that?
Yeah.
Well, I thought, it's funny because a place that, so marketing and advertising agencies and stuff often get asked to do annual reports. One of the things I was surprised you didn't say, I was expecting you to talk about is, okay, so Mario said, okay, what I took from what you talked about is, okay, focus. You almost kind of put it into a single key metric. And you could have multiple, but like you really focus there. And then you also talked about collaboration. I thought you might have talked about the sustainability reports and stuff that you've worked on, because I think what's interesting about those, I'm seeing that starting to creep in a little bit more.
Yeah.
And just like in US tech industry, where I've spent a lot of years, you start to see companies taking it on and saying, okay, I'm going to put out a diversity report.
Right.
And if they do it for real, they are not just mouthpiece, yes, diversity is important. Like, no, okay, I'm going to actually show you that I'm a tech company and I have this many African Americans and this many this and this many that, or what
Right.
have you. Is that a way that companies can really show and prove to?
I think absolutely, if you are doing an honest, genuine sustainability report as opposed to a marketing piece
Yes.
that looks good.
Yes.
Gone are the days where we do this sort of, and this is so politically incorrect, the kind of poor child with their head under the standpipe, we're helping save,
Right. Yes.
save the world.
Yeah.
So that kind of inappropriate
Right.
thing is gone now,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So if we're doing it right and we're actually genuinely putting out information that says, this is what we've done.
Yeah.
We're not perfect. We've made some mistakes. Some things are going wrong. But this is our plan to get it on track.
A broader plan.
Yeah.
Right. That, I think there's real value in that.
And even
But-
that takes a level of maturity.
Absolutely.
Get
the
It
point
takes
to-
a level
to
of
be
maturity
open-
to
to
be
be
able
open
to
to it.
say,
Yeah.
this is where we want our waste to be,
Yeah.
but it's not for
Yeah.
whatever reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We acknowledge that, but this is the plan, we have to correct it.
Yeah.
But the communication of what you're doing, you can only get to that point if you're doing.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. Exactly.
So that's
Exactly.
where the greenwashing comes
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
So you're not really doing.
Yes,
So
but
you
you're-
can't
you're
put that
positioning,
type of
yeah.
authentic sustainability
Agreed.
reporting out.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then you end up putting out this kind of marketing thing where, oh, we went and we painted a wall in a
flighty.
community
Right, yeah, yeah,
center,
yeah,
and then we
yeah.
gave out hampers,
Right.
and this poor child who was hungry, we gave them food,
Yes.
and we're the best company
Right.
in
Exactly.
the world.
And we did it one time and we left and we
And-
forgot about it. And
Yeah.
No,
Is,
I
the, is
think,
the
yeah,
plan
yeah.
itself even sustainable?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like
Exactly.
this is one off.
Exactly.
And I think another thing on sustainability, and sustainability, I don't even like that word anymore. I wish we could find something else because it's just been used and abused and poor
So
word.
people probably getting desensitized to it, maybe?
But if we think of is something sustainable, it basically means do we have the capacity to maintain it?
Yeah.
So forget about sustainability. Can I maintain this? So if I am doing this thing all the time, can I maintain it? Can I maintain it economically? Going back to the $5,
Yeah.
I might be able to.
Right.
But can the environment maintain this action? And can society maintain this action?
Yeah.
Can I continue, do I have the capacity to continue to do this on this one planet that we have? And until we understand that it is only one planet, and Mario's point about everything being connected.
Yeah.
So what is happening in Southeast Asia is affecting us. What is happening, we can't do that kind of not in my backyard anymore.
Right.
We can't take our garbage and send it by the neighbor and say, well, okay, good.
hold that.
Because when it starts to create a mound, the smell is going to come back into our house,
Yeah.
right? So I think there is a lot to be done, but for each person, for each organization, you need to figure out what works for you based on your particular business model, product, service, whatever.
Yeah. All right. So, Melanie, thanks. Mario, again, thanks for coming. Chike, thank you. And, it's really a good perspective in terms of looking at it holistically
Yeah.
and really understanding that we can no longer afford to kick that can down the road. But I feel like there's need for more conversation. So I feel like we need to definitely have a part 2 to this sustainability. It needs to be an ongoing discussion, something sustainable.
Yeah.
Right? And, we'll certainly be inviting you all back and some other guests as we really drive this forward towards building a coalition of the willing and making transformational change. You all, thank you again. And this has been another good ABC chat.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.